Thanks for tuning into the 6-3 podcast. I'm your host, Joel, my co-host Ben. And Michigan did not get the dub in a very battle-tested game, apparently. I think a lot of us kind of anticipated Michigan would win. TCU would fight. But I think that should have happened. I mean, hindsight's 2020. We look at all the boneheaded plays early on in that game that kind of really killed it for Michigan. Kind of got a little cute at the goal line, coming away with only 3 total points with 3 possessions within the 3-yard line or less. That's not any recipe for success.
No.
And so when you only get a Jake Moody field goal, it's like 20 yards, and then Kalel Mullings fumbles it in the end zone. They don't call the Roman Wilson a touchdown catch, despite them calling it a touchdown on the field. I didn't see there's any way to reverse that, but again, it is what it is. You got to cash in on those opportunities. The Colston Loveland fake play that was supposed to go to JJ McCarthy didn't work. That's the other thing. It's like got too cute too early. You got to come out with points. We actually talked about it. You pointed it out in the game preview that Michigan is going to have to come out on top early and kind of just stay ahead and then keep playing their game of smash mouth football.
Yeah.
And their first play from scrimmage was Donovan Edwards, 60+ yard run. And I don't know, just a lot of frustrating things about that game, but I was still impressed with their fight despite going down so badly at the beginning. So that was encouraging, but still depressing. What are your thoughts on this game?
I mean, they just gave themselves too big of a hole to dig out of, even though they basically did dig out of it, incredibly. Um, they just it's just poor execution, I think, is the biggest thing, and which is you see that in some of these bowl games. You have such a layoff, and I know you're trying to get so many guys healthy, and I mean, you saw veterans busting, especially on defense, just busting simple stuff that they've ran all year that they haven't really busted that bad all year. Um, and I think it's just lack of reps or lack of execution, or just you kind of fall out of that locked in mode when you have a whole month off, and sometimes hard to get back into it. So that's why you see, in my opinion, these playoff games be so high scoring, is because it's very easy to come up with an offensive game plan that's going to score points if you have a month layoff. It's hard to execute at a high level on defense when you've got a whole month where you haven't been playing, right? You don't have those
Mhm.
live reps, especially when you have veterans that are trying to get healthy and you're trying to get guys back. If you've kind of limped into the bowl season, on fumes there, which is in
Mhm.
Michigan's case and really TCU's case. I mean, they were injured going into it too quite a bit. So I don't know. I just think the biggest takeaway is, poor execution, and they gave themselves a huge hole to dig out of, and that's just the disappointing part. If they'd come out on top, like you said, I mean, you can question the getting cute by the goal line with the Philly special play call, right? And I don't really, I mean, yeah, it seems dumb, but if it works, it isn't dumb, right? So it's just kind of
Right.
one of those things where uh, I don't necessarily worry about that one because they did get the ball right back, right, without allowing TCU to score. TCU went 3-and-out, or they punted it right back to them. It's that one didn't bother me as much in the long run. It's just now when you look back at it and you lost by 6 points, it's like, oh my gosh, like there were so many missed opportunities early in that game, and that's the sad part. The more frustrating one is definitely the fumble, at the goal line by Mullings, and yeah,
It is
that was
interesting that they've decided that Mullings all of a sudden was their number 2 back in the last couple weeks.
yeah. I
He played
mean,
linebacker all year, and in spring we knew he was, gunning for running back position, but he hadn't
yeah,
played
and
until like last.
whatever on that. I mean, frustrating for sure, but obviously they saw enough. He did score a touchdown in the game. Obviously they saw enough that they felt like he would execute. I just don't like. I don't mind giving him the ball there. I just don't like going under center fullback dive when they really hadn't ran that much at all this year, all year, right? You know what I mean, to this point, right? And just the timing seemed off, and it's not a. I don't mind that play in a sense of like Like if you're sitting there and you're playing Madden, right, that's probably a good play, right? Because it works, right? But if you don't run that all the time as a team, and you're not used to repping that, that's not something that's gonna, that you can hang your hat on, right? There are other things that they could have done, um, that they eventually went to later in the game, that probably would have been a better option there. But um, again, hindsight, if he jams it in the end zone there, and then we're probably sitting there going, "Man, Khalil Mullings he's the next fullback," right? So it's frustrating. It's my bigger takeaway is just the bust on defense that um, didn't really happen all year, and they happened in this game, and some of that can definitely be attributed to Max Duggan making plays, Quentin Johnson making plays, um, but some of it was just busts. I mean, just big, just
Looked like
missed
for the first
tackles.
time, yeah, first time all year, the trenches we got just killed in both sides of the foot. The offensive line had never been bullied that much. I mean,
No,
Joe Moore Award winners, and it just seems like running down the middle had zero success except for that
yeah,
first play of the game.
yeah, I mean, they did some different things. TCU certainly did some different things. So, um, you know, that 355 can make it really difficult to find, to time your combo blocks up, because they're blitzing from different spots, and that's kind of the whole idea behind it. But um, I think, yeah, I mean, TCU executed. TCU was ready to go. Michigan found some things certainly in the run game later in the game, mostly with McCarthy, that that worked. And I think, they probably took too long to go to that. And that would probably be my take on the offensive side of the ball. It's like, hey, we took way too long to
He
go
used
to
the speed of JJ McCarthy.
right to go to that as an option. It didn't need to be the number one option, right? But it needed to take, that was what the defense was giving you. That was something that could um, get you some big plays in the run game that you were missing. And they just didn't go to that until late. And that was at least until probably mid third quarter, I would think, when he had the big long touchdown run, and then he started running more, which that's what you needed to do all game. Um, you
If
know,
Duggan's allowed to do it, JJ definitely should be allowed to do it.
and I get it. Like, you know, they felt like they were going to be able to run some of their other stuff and just kind of consistently rip off 3-4 yards. When you get down early as much as they did, that you can't rely on just getting 3 and 4 yards at a time. Because I do think they could have eventually kind of worn on them had they had a lead, had they had a 2-score lead early. Then they could have kind of controlled the ball, controlled the clock, and I think that's what they wanted to do. But the poor execution at the beginning of the game, um, just kind of caused it to not play out that way. So you have to adjust a little bit quicker. I think again, you can't complain. They scored however many points on
45 points, right?
45
45.
points on offense. And if you told me Michigan was going to score 45, I would have told you they were probably winning by 14 points, right? Um, I did think it would be higher scoring. I did think TCU would score. I didn't think there would be that many busts on defense. So for Michigan.
And with the mix of like Max Duggan, I know Kendra Miller got hurt early on, but he was very effective early on in that game too. And Quentin Johnson with the size and speed downfield. Tay Barber was
Yeah.
really solid. I mean,
The crazy thing is it was like the inverse of the Michigan Ohio State game to an extent, not that bad, but it was it was kind of one of those things where Michigan down to down, I think, was winning at least for a good chunk of the game. But TCU was just hitting on every single bust that Michigan had, or hitting the big play when it mattered. Michigan gets back to a 3-point game. It was 48-45, I think. And they have 3rd and 9 or 3rd and 8. And then suddenly, TCU makes a nice play call, and then DJ Turner's got a chance to tackle uh, Quentin Johnson short of the first down. So Michigan gets the ball back with a chance to finally take a lead and misses the tackle, and it's 75 yards down the sideline. Those things kept happening, and they haven't happened all year long like that. It's frustrating. It's really frustrating that it had to happen in this game, right? You much would have preferred it happened against a bad team, or earlier in the year, in a game that maybe you could have won anyway.
mhm.
But it's just kind of one of those things right now, and you got to look back on it and say, hey, they just didn't execute. They didn't have it figured out. So
So after watching Ohio State go toe to toe with Georgia and watching TCU obviously hang with Michigan and win even, um, let's look at that game, Georgia TCU. Who do you think? Do you still anticipate Georgia blows them out of the water, or do you think it's a much better game than a lot of people will still anticipate?
Um, I don't think I don't think it'll be a blowout necessarily. I think TCU, they're veteran. They've got the veteran quarterback. They've got some older guys up front, certainly, and on defense. I think they'll be able to cover Georgia a decent amount, at least on the outside. I think Tomlinson can definitely match up decent with Quentin or with some of Georgia's receivers. But I don't know. I think overall Georgia is going to be able to have a good enough game plan after watching TCU to where they're going to score enough points. I think TCU will definitely score some points on them, but I think Georgia will be able to. I don't think it'll necessarily be just like a mauling though. I think TCU handles it up front decent enough to where I don't think it'll be in this just line up and grind it out, just smash. I think Stetson Bennett's going to have a big game, kind of like he did against Ohio State. And I, but I do think Georgia will probably win by 8, 10 points. But I think it'll be a really good game.
I think 42-31 kind of jumps out to me.
Yeah, yeah, it seems like a good one. Good score.
I mean, obviously, we've seen the evolution of like Lad McConkey has gotten better. Obviously, Brock Bowers continues to be one of the best tight ends in the nation. You know,
Yeah,
Adonai Mitchell and Arian Smith have been really key targets as well for Stetson Bennett to continue his underdog success at Georgia. So I think Darnell Washington is possibly not in, but like I said,
yeah.
Brock Bowers is still that key tight end for not only their future but in this game. Um, so I don't know. I tend to lean towards Georgia pretty strongly. I think that defense has also been more battle tested than what TCU has been all year.
No doubt.
Um,
I think they'll make enough plays. I think it'll be kind of one of those back and forth games. And I think, TCU will definitely be in the game. I think Duggan keeps them in the game. He'll put the team on his back for drives or for quarters at a time. But he's not, I mean, you even saw it against Michigan. He's not precise. I would not call him a precise quarterback. I mean, his stat line, although his yards probably look decent because of some of the big plays, he was widely inaccurate. I mean, he was not very good overall. But he made enough plays, right? He was making big plays when it mattered. And I think he's going to continue to do that. I just don't think he's going to be efficient enough to kind of lead them to a win against a Georgia team that is good. It's frustrating. I mean, if you look kind of from Michigan's side of things, because I think this was as good a time as any to win a national championship. Because I do think this Georgia team isn't quite as good is not nearly as good as last year. They have holes, so I think this Michigan team very easily could have won the national championship. But again, you didn't show up. You didn't really show up for the first half of the game that mattered. So it's frustrating. So.
yeah, I don't. Is there any what would be the key for TCU to somehow pull this game out?
Duggan has to play out of his mind. He's got to be more efficient. He's got to be more accurate underneath because I think Georgia's going to just try to make him pick them apart. Um, I think he's got to be just more of an efficient quarterback, look more like an NFL quarterback rather than a guy who's a really good athlete with a really good arm. Just a thrower back there instead of a quarterback. I mean, even I would even say JJ McCarthy is a more precise quarterback than Max Duggan. Duggan is a more willing and a better runner than JJ right now, but I would even say from overall quarterback ability, JJ McCarthy is higher than he is, and even Stetson Bennett is way more efficient than Max Duggan. It's just Duggan's just made big plays, big plays, big plays. I don't think you can rely on that against Georgia consistently to win the game. I don't think they're going to allow that. So,
Well, Kendra Miller, I wasn't actually even sure on his status for that game. I think
they're
this.
saying questionable, but I don't think he's going to play. He didn't look very good.
I mean, I know they tried to put him out there, but that almost kind of it was almost reminiscent of when they tried to put Blake Corum out there.
Yeah, he was not going to work.
Yeah.
Looked like he took all his pads off too by the end of the game. I mean, he was not not good to go. I mean, their backup running back's decent, but again, I think it's going to be mostly on Duggan. So
We talked about it in the Michigan TCU preview. Like TCU's offensive line, like they're all seniors,
mhm,
very experienced offensive line. I think
mhm.
one might be a redshirt junior, but I mean, one of the most experienced offensive lines, bunch of tanks
Yeah.
there in the trenches. So I guess that did kind of pose a little bit of a problem for Michigan's defensive line, who usually had no issues
Again,
across the
the
line.
down, I think it was fine. I think it's just the big play here, the big play there. Plus the threat of Duggan as a runner changes it, right? That changes how you have to defend.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you saw it a couple different times. He's made something out of nothing, and it's like, that breaks your back in a big play situation where you need that play. Quarterback can't run. I mean, that changes everything. So, um, yeah, I think it's got to be on Duggan for the most part. They'll sprinkle in some of the running game with the running backs and stuff, but Duggan's gonna have to make all the plays for the most part.
Well, we did somehow make it to week 18 now, where the Lions are playing a game that matters. And that has to be as encouraging as any Lions fan would have expected this year.
Yeah.
Um, it's going to come down to this Lions Packers game here in Lambeau Field, which I think a couple of us probably remember from the 2015 season, maybe,
Yep.
where they had to go into Lambeau to get in, and they did not.
Yep.
They did not take care of business. This is a different Lions team, but I do wonder with the
And a
Seahawks
different
Rams
Packers
game being
team.
well, and the Seahawks Rams game playing at 4:30. Like everyone talks about how MCDC is still going to have these guys ready to go, and yeah, maybe they will. I just still think that takes enough out of a team where it's like it won't be the same team we would get if the Seahawks do lose.
I mean, I don't know. I think this team is locked in enough to where they don't really care. I think they understand. They would obviously care. I shouldn't say that, but like they're going to be ready to go regardless. I think it's one of those things where you know they care more about themselves getting better, and they care more about the direction of this team right now than the results of a game that they don't have anything to do with, right? So I think they're going to be pretty locked in. Now, don't get me wrong, they're going to be paying attention to what's going on. They're human, they're not stupid. So they definitely are going to know whether the stakes mean, hey, win playoffs, lose don't, or it doesn't really matter, right? Um, but I mean, if you're a Lions fan, you really can't complain too much at this point. Like you're in position to be in position. It's kind of one of those things where you've got to, you possibly have a chance at the end of the year, and that's way, like you said, that's way better than we thought could be the case at the beginning of the season, or especially 7 weeks into the season, we thought there was zero chance that this was going to be the case. Um, it's quite the turnaround. It was it's been a really fun year. I mean, in the state of Michigan for football in general, but it's just been really fun. Just with the Lions, it's been really fun. Yeah, I would love for them to get a chance to play for a chance to get in. I think that would be really, really cool. I'm not necessarily banking on it. I don't think it's likely. Um, but look, the Rams aren't like tanking or anything, right? And the Seahawks are not some superpower team. Um, so there is a chance. It's not like you know, it's not. I know ESPN probably doesn't give it much of a chance, but it's not like it's ridiculous. They don't need like four different things to fall their way. They just need one thing to happen. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah, so I was thinking about it though, because even if the Lions win this game and the Seahawks lose and they get in,
mhm.
um, like we're looking at taking on the 49ers, which is probably one of two teams that I'm not stoked about playing.
No, I mean I'm not stoked about playing them, but guess what? We're in the playoffs. I think what that does is in general. I mean, I think it validates what they're doing, first of all, to the fan base. Not that I don't think I think the fan base should feel validated anyway. I mean, I think everything should be validated anyway, the way the season's gone. Um, but I think what it does is it really does validate what they've done this year and what the direction of the organization. And two, you know, I don't really care about the draft position anymore at this point. It's pretty. I'm not saying it's not locked in, but it's pretty. you're going to be in a certain range at this point, so right? And they have some draft capital if they want to move around. Um, and I just think at this point, like getting a team to the playoffs in year two based off of where they were last year and then before, Campbell and Holmes and this regime got there, I think that means more than worrying about your matchup, right? And if you get there, who knows what could happen, man? Like, who knows? Like, this team has enough talent where, if the stars align and they kind of, you saw it even last year, if the games are cut the way they want them to be played and they play at the pace and the flow that they want them to be played at, you never know. It could happen. I'm not saying it will. I'm not saying I would even pick it to happen. I wouldn't even, I hesitate picking them to win this week. Um, but this team could be anybody in the NFL, right? They could also lose to anybody in the NFL. They're kind of in that in between where I don't, you know, I trust them against the worst teams, but I don't, it wouldn't surprise me either way against any team.
I think they could be. I look at the other teams that are probably in the playoffs, and I mean it's virtually set except for the 7th seed now, which could be the
Mhm.
Packers or the Seahawks or
Mhm.
the Lions.
Mhm.
Um, but I mean, you look at the Eagles and the 49ers are probably the two teams, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not, especially if Hurts is back for the Eagles. I mean, the
Yeah.
Lions have seen them before. Lions have
Yep.
played Jalen Hurts, and
I've
they
played.
hung with them in week
Yep.
one. And I
Long
think
time
they're a
ago.
better and I think they're a better team now than they were at that point as well.
No doubt.
Um 49ers, technically they still have like Brock Purdy. So
Yeah.
it's like there's that chance that Purdy lays the inevitable egg.
Hmm.
Um, Vikings, they can beat. The Bucks, I think they can beat. The Cowboys, I'm not sure, but
Yeah.
I think they can. And the Giants, I think they can beat. They have beat. So it's like it's unfortunate. The only way they can play the Vikings is if the Vikings win against the Bears and
Hmm.
the 49ers somehow lose to the Cardinals with David Blau. So that's why it's
It's
not
all
likely.
coming full circle. Hard knocks is all coming full circle.
I know. Just like that, Matt Stafford will be back for the Rams this week, and
Right.
right,
He's eligible to come off IR. I think he's doing
yeah,
it.
they did activate him, so he had those
The
21 games.
Detroit Rams. Let's
Yeah,
go.
so yeah, I don't. I actually, on principle, it's like I in a pick 'em. I pick the Lions and I pick the Rams, but
Yeah, why
that's
not?
what I don't anticipate either of those things happening. I do think, I think the Seahawks win, and I think the Packers win, which still means the Packers get in and take that 7 spot.
I would yeah, I do think that's probably what's gonna happen. I think the Lions will play well, though. I do think they'll be in it. I just think um I don't know. I don't love this Packers team at all. I don't. I don't think they're very good. Um, but they are starting to figure out what they need to do to win games instead of trying to be something they're not. They're not like the old Packers teams. So they're starting to figure out what it takes for this team to win, and unfortunately, they figured it out uh, at the right time for them. So
Yeah,
the Lions have nobody to blame but themselves for not being firmly in the playoffs at this point. So
mean, the only person they have officially out for the Lions is Coyote Alshika.
yep.
But like, Kabinda's questionable, Deshaun Elliott's questionable, Jeff Okuda, Frank Ragnow are all,
Sounds like Elliott should for sure play though. Campbell
yeah.
said unless he has some setback, there's no way he's not going to play. So
And I think pretty much everyone's expected to play for the Packers as well. So it'll be interesting. I just if I have to come up with a score right now, I think it's probably like 33-24 Packers.
yep, yeah, I think it'll be close for a while. Packers will go up 2 scores with like 5 minutes left, and that'll be it. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, it'll be a fun weekend of football. Um, but yeah, appreciate you joining us on this Saturday and making it happen.
for
It's
sure.
a shorter episode, but yeah, I mean, a lot of good football happened in the state of Michigan this year, so nothing to be too cranky about for sure.
Nothing to be upset about. Should be, and everything's still looking up, so we should be good.
Well, the baby just woke up, so we're gonna cut
Great
it
time.
cut it off here. But appreciate you coming on, and we'll see you next week.
See you.